just go back real quick about when you commented on how much the cast was. It was a dope cast. I want to highlight in particular one particular actor, Olawumi Musaku, and I've in recent light I've seen pictures of what she actually looks like, and I want to direct this message to Marvel, particularly. You guys will rot in hell. You guys will never see heaven because how bad you done her dirty is Hunter B-15 and Loki. This woman is beautiful. You will not see heaven. You will not see peace. But no, they did not do her justice because even Sinners, she was looking like something nice. But at B-15, they gave her the box top, made her look like whatever a CO correction officer, and I'm like, hey yo,
Welcome everybody to Blerdlines. This is your man Cam. With me, as always, is
yo, this is the other Cam. Glad to be in the building. I'm in better spirits, but boy, let's get into it.
and as well as
Hey, this is Josh, your favorite Ray Charles impersonator.
and bringing up the rear, always keeping us honest.
Professor D. Evil in this case. Evil. Evil.
And and as I'm humming Negro spirituals, we are here to discuss Ryan Coogler's Sinners. We are four gentlemen that have experienced it, and we wanted to talk on it for it. But before we do that, we're going to set the ground rules. So out the gate, we're going to talk about positives first, then we can talk about negatives, and we'll keep it to just the film because there's a lot of talk around it. There's a lot of hype around it. There's a lot of this and that. Everyone's taking different symbolisms about it, but we want to keep it straight to the film at least first, so that way we can have a more of a constructive conversation, and then we can talk about all the other stuff. But out the gate, Ryan Coogler's Sinners came out. It's been about 2 weeks now, so I got to watch it, and I think my overall take from me is like I actually enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the cinematography. The music was freaking bananas. Like I thought, like it had a good feel of a film. Like it just felt good. Like and largely, and I'll shout out the cinematographer a lot in this conversation, but like she just like killed it. Like she just had a lot of good shots, and that helps it with a lot of the narrative. And I think like the music also like drove it around. The casting was actually pretty solid all around, and from top to bottom. And I like even some of the supporting cast or people that you wouldn't know or whatever, but they made their stamp into this film. And I think for me, like I was like, okay, at the end of it, quibbles aside, I actually really enjoyed those aspects of it. Cam, what was your positives?
White people like it. So
I'll take it.
Positive, is that a positive, or is that more in the neutral territory? What is
Mm.
Yes. No. So okay, here's a positive. Shout out to Ryan Coogler for being able to take on a project. First and foremost, we don't see this often, but giving flowers to a brother from Oakland who's actually making projects in this industry is always a plus, regardless of how my personal feelings towards the industry and how people move in this industry. Shout out to Ryan Coogler. Shout out to the cinematographer. Forgive me for not remembering her name, but it was a beautifully shot film, shot on 70 millimeter. If you do have a chance to go watch 70 millimeter film, go do it. I think that's dope.
Highly.
I also say support Black directors to an extent. This is not a bad movie per se to not say don't go watch this. Go watch this movie. Support. It's dope. It's another take on a vampire story, for better or worse. What else? The music was cool. The implementation of how it was done, I have an issue with, but exposing the music, putting it out there again for a wider audience who may not be familiar with that, that's a positive in my opinion. But again, It has positives for a lot of people. They just don't hit for me like they did for other people. But it's a cool movie. It's not a bad movie. It's just I have some issues with it.
Yeah, D.
You said this is the comic.
Positive D.
I'm just making sure before I go to my notebook here. No, I'm just kidding. No, I agree with the things that you both said. I think it's a solid, competently made movie, and I think that needs to be said. And I think also it's very creative in its approach in trying to tell a story, a film narrative, a Hollywood movie that brings a lot of elements together and makes it work. It's a great cast that we've seen in many different things, and they all come through in this. From the veteran actors of Delroy Lindo, who I always say that dude is my favorite black uncle on screen. Like he just makes every single thing. Josh said this to me off screen is that he does make the things that he's in better when he's on screen, because he just has that energy. I did really enjoy the diaspora and the way that they showed it and visualized it. That was amazing, because it's and there's something to be said about the allure of the music to the Irish vampire, the main antagonist of the story. In that idea of black culture in and of itself being one of the most original American cultures that there is, and that all of these other many other immigrants outs that have come later have learned American culture through the sort of veil or the diaspora of black culture. And so Coogler does a good job of putting us into that world, and then and allowing us to understand how music is more than just music for our culture and for many of our cultures, not just one group, but and it has that long lineage that connects magically almost each generation. So those are my positives. The greater scope conceit was well thought out, and execution is another matter. I'll talk about that later. But this idea of what they tried to do with the diaspora, in creating this world building mythology that I thought was very derivative of Bitterroot. I'm just gonna say that. I don't know.
Shout out to Bitterroot too.
Yeah, I don't know what Coogler has. He may have a relationship with those guys. It's maybe the sign of something more to come. I don't know, and if it is, that would be great. But right now, it's very derivative
Positives.
Fine, that's
yeah, to add a book into that, yeah. So Coogler and Michael B. Jordan actually optioned Bitterroot. Bitterroot is a graphic novel by Sanford Green. And it's kind of like a black Southern family fighting monsters, essentially. And so, but yeah, they are connected. Actually, I think they optioned it to develop it into a TV series, something or other. But that was something that got announced last year, I want to say. So, anyways, but
it's possible that it could have been setting up a bigger world. Yeah. So that's why I said not a critique, but that's the way it felt.
Yeah, definitely. Josh?
I thought it was very good. On a scale of good to very good to good, very good, or excellent, I thought it was very good. I thought it was well thought out. I thought the world was nicely fleshed out in the beginning third of the film. Maybe a little bit heavy on the exposition. But I think it served to give you a basis for each character. I think it served to give you a basis for the world they occupy. Not that you need all that much priming for 1930s Black America, but nonetheless, like I said, I thought it was well fleshed out. As Dee alluded to, When he and I, as I was watching it and texting him, Delroy Lindo automatically elevates everything he's in. As soon as he came on the screen, like the movie just instantly got better. Like that scene at the train station instantly just made everything pop in a different kind of way.
It reminds you of how when he got into what's the name, The Harder They Fall, how as Bass Reeves, just the movie just had a new energy to it.
Yeah, same thing, you know. And I thought it was really smart of Coogler to introduce most of the remaining characters in that same scene, recognizing that Delroy Lindo does what he does when he's on screen. Haley Steinfeld comes in. What's the sister's name? Jasmine.
Sister Girl.
Yeah. She comes in and everybody gets elevated as a result. I thought the sort of the music as spiritual sort of vehicle was easily one of the best things about the movie. That montage was excellent. I didn't think it, it touched on a lot of stuff that I'm very familiar with, both in terms of American music, in terms of Black American music, musical inventions, one, and then two, African spirituality also. It touched on not only music but dance as a vehicle for a variety of things, and I thought it was very well conceived, very well done, and I think it sort of set the stage for the sort of the piece about the guitar. It did a bunch of stuff all in one shot. Yeah, and I thought, like I said, I thought it was very well conceived. There were a couple of niggling issues, but nothing that took me out of it. Nothing that made me feel like it wasn't well done, well thought. It was very well shot. Autumn Durald, the cinematographer that we've been mentioning.
Yes, Autumn Durald, she's awesome.
That woman has an eye. Holy cow! This was the cinematography in this film was top notch. I hesitate to say that it's Oscar award worthy, but it's way up there. It's way up there. She's definitely got a feel and an eye, and I want to watch it again just to sort of peep some of the sort of color palette themes and scene setups that she was using and frame ups that she employed, because I'm sure there's stuff that I missed while I was watching all the other stuff. But yeah, she's an ace. She's definitely put a great stamp on the film. The composer did a pretty reasonable, did always a good job. Coogler's guy Ludwig, as always, did a great job of nailing the sort of aesthetic from a musical standpoint. I love that they didn't do what they did with Lovecraft Country, which was sort of, it's this period piece and it's set in this particular time frame, but we're going to use contemporary music from today.
Positive
No.
only.
I like what I'm saying. I liked that they didn't do that. That's a positive.
They did have
negative for Lovecraft Country. It's a positive for Sinners.
Anachronistic music.
Yes.
In that movie. They did.
Yeah, later.
They just didn't do it in the exact same way, that, but it's there.
Yes, I didn't mean to say that it's not there. Sorry, I did say that. But yeah, it's there, but I think it's used better and in a much more subtle way than the sledgehammer that it was used, sledgehammer way that it was used in Lovecraft Country. But yeah, I think those are. I feel like I have more, but I think that's the general overview and the positives that I took away. Very well done movie, I thought.
Yeah, and like the ones I'll add is just like I said, I really did enjoy the casting of it. Like Delroy Lindo was freaking awesome. Shout out to Miles Caton too. He's like he's a singer and this was his first run. And I actually enjoyed his stuff. It wasn't like it wasn't anything spectacular, but it didn't take away from it. I'll Michael B. Jordan as the twins, it worked enough that I was okay. Like it wasn't. I think Michael B. Jordan's is such an interesting thing because there's a big swath of people that think he's really good, and then there's other people that think he's horrible. I think he's like pretty much in the middle, and it's fine. It didn't take me out of it. There's other things that did, but now that we've played the nicey nice and we played put in the things that we thought were positive. Oh yeah, shout out to the sister girl Haley Stanfield. A quarter, was it 22% black now?
I mean, her character wasn't even that much black. Her character was only like 15% black. So
yeah, for real. Passing, bruh. Passing. All right. So now that we got all that out the way, now we can talk to the things that we can talk about, which is now the critique of the film, and a lot of the things that was going on. I think one of the unfortunate parts when it comes to black cinema is like people get real antsy about critiquing something and just wanted to quick to overpraise. And I would rather have a better conversation. We could really get down to the nitty gritty of the construction of it and the actual making of the film itself. And then we could do all the cultural shit later.
Yeah, because I think any critique you get here is not necessarily to say that the movie is bad. It's just to say that these things coming down to the execution maybe could have been done differently. I don't know. If doing them differently would have made it better or worse, I don't know. But they are the things that kind of stand out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think say for instance, the scene that everyone loves with all the different dancers and stuff, I thought that shit was fucking silly. Like I didn't need to see B-boys and Crip Cuds sea walking in 1932 Mississippi. Like it totally took me out. I knew why he did it. I liked the way that it was pointed, but then I think for me it was a little too long, and I know why all the different parts. And it was funny because my girlfriend called out the Chinese dance that they had was from Chinese, but it's more like the communist, like the winners of it. Like it's a very specific Chinese opera style, but there's so many other ones that they could have put. So that was a very nuanced little. Same with the B-boy. Like when I saw the B-boy, I was like, yeah, I know what you're trying to do, but it didn't do anything to me. Like I didn't go like, oh shit, there's a B-boy. I was just kind of like, oh, this is goofy. But
should have been auditory. Just
yeah.
In the framing, for me, in the larger context of what he was trying to do, to me, it made sense to have those elements. For me, I liked it. It did not take me out. I think it was a great enhancer, a lovely montage, and I think if it was just American elements, I think it would have been exactly what you just said. It would have taken me completely out of it. But I think the fact that it went back to the root of African dance, different types of musical African worship, different spirituality, that those things, knowing the different types of spirituality that imagery invokes, coupled with more American contemporary inventions, like rock, like blues, like jazz, like b-boying. For me, it worked. I saw the connective tissue between the different things that he was trying to display, and it made sense. And it made sense for the scene to me. So for me, it worked, and it worked extraordinarily well. It did not take me out the way that it took you guys out.
It added about 10 or 15 minutes additionally to that film that was unnecessary and wasn't
not 10 minutes long.
It was long enough.
So here's the thing. I too understand what he was trying to accomplish, especially after hearing the monologue, which I think was cut, with Delroy Lindo's character in the car retelling the story and how music is a connection and all that. Leading up to this scene. For me, it would have been cool if he'd have just kept all the dances from the past up to their time period and stopped. African dances. I didn't need to see b-boying.
Yeah.
I didn't need to see b-boying. I didn't need to see the everything in the future. I get they're trying to put futurism, but I think this probably would have worked a lot better if he could have got all the previous history leading up to their time period and stopped it. And I think that could have been a lot shorter in a better montage or done a little bit differently. I get what they were trying to do. That could have worked for me. But once I saw Grandmaster Flash, B-Boy, hyphy movement,
Exactly.
it took me completely out of the moment.
Mm.
Like
That.
that did not work. And I saw a lot of people, which it's their opinion, that they love that. And I was like, nah, that didn't do it for me. I was like, it kind of made me cringe, to be honest. I was
Yeah.
like, all right,
Really?
Yeah.
like, yeah, nah, I
Yeah.
wasn't feeling
I was
it.
just
As a narrative, it you have a period piece that's set in 1939. Going backwards makes sense, but going forward makes absolutely no sense.
I think that the
Because
whole point that he
up
was
until
trying
that point, hang on one second.
to
Up
sorry.
until that point, you had not. Up until that point, there's no way of knowing that those music. So you're coming completely out of the diegesis of the film. Now you're going to a place that only the audience knows. Those individuals in the film, in the story, they could not know that those things are coming. So I agree with Cam in that it probably should have just been from the past up into that contemporary point. At least would have not made it seem A, like low hanging fruit, and B, a little excessive. That's just the way I thought about it.
To me, I felt
yeah.
the whole point of the scene was past, present, and future. You know what I mean? Like speaking to the audience in that way, in a visual. It's not like a b-boy showed up and stayed. You know what I mean? The idea was that to me, it spoke to, like I said, it spoke to past, present, and future, and I think it did it in a really smart and very artistic way. I wasn't bothered by it at all. It did jump out a little bit. I will agree, and I will, at the very least, I will cop to, yes, if it was me doing it, I probably would have stuck with the past up to that point. But yeah, for me, it didn't take me out. I saw what he was trying to do, and for me, it worked.
And I think that's the thing. Oh, go ahead, Cam.
No, I was gonna say maybe Cam, you can help me out with this. What was the Baz? What's his name? Lerman's
Yeah, Boz
show.
Lerman.
It reminded me of
the Get Down. The Get
yeah, it
Down.
reminded me of the Get Down. It got cheesy, bro. I was like, nah, this ain't it, bro. Like, just keep it.
Keep it
It could have been half short and twice strong if it had just kept all those contemporary dances past their time out of it. And
Or
I was
you're
just like,
already bringing elements of cinema together. As I said before, maybe some of the visuals were there, but maybe you dial up the auditory aspects of it, the editing, things like that. That in and of itself impresses me more than the obvious thing of the thing that it is. The making it into a more ethereal experience that uses all of the elements of cinema, not just because at that point it was just the camera and the costumes and the people that were there. But if you had that, and then you kind of mix it up with the because Josh, you're right. It is the representative of the past, present, and future, and that is the story motif that he had with it. So I get why he did it. But I think what we're talking about is objective, right? We're talking about creative objectivity. We could have did it in multiple different ways, and each way could have been received differently. So past, present, future, that part worked. Was the visual aspect of it a little too excessive and at times incoherent? Yes.
Yeah, that was, and I think that was my overall thing. Like, at least like Cam, like right when I saw it, I was like, okay, I know what you're doing, but it took me out. And I literally, as I'm watching it, I'm thinking like 5 different ways it probably could have done in a way that made sense. But that's our nerdy brain. So to not harp on that particular part, Cam, you are a very big fan of vampires, and I would like to understand, and D'Angelo, you are as well. So from me, the vampire part of this movie made it was, I almost wish he would have used an African monster that might have been similar, because I like the Afro mysticism that they had introduced earlier on, that at the very least was like, oh, this is a little bit different. But when the vampires kind of showed up, the my mind automatically went to what my expectations and what I know of vampires. So if anything went out of that expectation, I was kind of like, this is kind of weird. And like, I just started to question it as opposed to just enjoy what was going on. And like, I think that was another part for me that skipped a beat, because I was kind of like, I mean, I knew there was vampires in it. That wasn't the problem. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, like what type of vampires are we getting? And then all of a sudden it was this weird mashup of it that was kind of like, I didn't rock with it. And I think that was my overall tone for most of it. Like, I enjoyed the film, but there's pieces of it that was just like, I can see it. Either you rock with it or you don't. If you rock with it, it's super dope. You think it's a really great film. If you don't, it takes you out and it makes you wonder why it took you out. So I was curious to see where you guys landed on the vampire aspect of the movie.
I think the vampire thing is a backdrop to a deeper meaning for, in my opinion, Ryan was trying to put. It is a horror movie, but there's subliminal messages between it. And one of the things, I think, if this was a lead vampire villain, black vampire villain, I could look at his point of view a little bit differently than I can see Remick. But also, Remick, coming from an Irish background, historically, the Irish were the low of the low until they became officially recognized as white. So his appealing to the black community, I can understand, but I think this would have been a different movie if our main antagonist was a black guy trying to co-opt and give that
it
same.
Probably would have played into the old versus the new.
Yeah, old versus new.
But Christianity versus some of our original belief systems.
Yeah. And it was funny because we were talking offline about how Remick, the main antagonist, lead vampire, was trying to appeal to the struggle of black Americans, and he wanted to have a community. And I just said he's assimilating us, because at the end of the day, he's still a lead vampire. He's still going to control everybody. He's selling them on a false pretense of community, but now you've given up your life as a human to live under one singular vampire's reign, in a sense. So it's kind of ass backwards. If I'm looking at it like, yeah, you kind of selling me a dream, and I understand that you want us to rebel about how we're looked at in society, but ultimately, unbeknownst to them, but we know this, is that society's still gonna look bad on this. So even if we're vampires and we try to move under the skies of night, this is the same thing in Interview with a Vampire. Louis still has to walk behind Lestat. And that's the same problem you're gonna have. What they don't see is that they don't know this. They don't see that Remick, is saying, yeah, you could be under one rule. I mean, one community. But at the end of the day, at night, when you're walking around a community, you still have to abide by the rules of mankind and society to coexist. Because if they find out you're vampires, then the whole world's against you. So you have to live amongst the humans as vampires. But I just felt that whole thing about how Remick was trying to get them to their cause was kind of weak and surface level, low hanging fruit, as D'Angelo likes to say. The one thing that kind of I wanted them to talk more about was the native indigenous people a little bit more and highlight them, because they came on the scene very quick.
Agreed.
I felt like, for me, I always, whenever there's a vampire, I kind of want to know their backstory. I don't feel like I got that. I mean, I don't think it was necessary, but for me, I would always like to know the backstory of how he came to be. He just appeared, and he appeared kind of in the evening, so maybe he was getting cooked. I don't know. There's a little, what I know about vampires and what I see
is that he was probably nesting or resting or sleeping somewhere,
and
they hang up on him, and he was. It had to be a short distance because he was able to.
He was cooking.
He was boiling like. Well, I won't say this.
Yeah.
But
So here's one thing too. It was interesting for the native or indigenous people to have a short screen time and not fool with those white people, because once the native saw that KKK, he was like, all right, you already know what it is. You're not going to listen to me. Society. He was just like, I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to help you. He looked inside, saw the hood. He was like, you know what it is? Y'all not going to listen to me anyway. So
have a great day, folks.
Yeah, have a great day.
It was also a moment of they were sticking with their own. They invited Remick in as easy as butter, because he like you brought up the Irish thing, and that was happening around that time where Irish immigrants were coming to the U.S. and they were not considered white because they were Catholic, they were poor, and they weren't non-Protestant. So you have those themes there, and I think it was less of him saying we will be a part of this community as much as it is you are inviting us to be all one. But one of the moments that really kind of served that leitmotif was when Smoke is like, don't let them in. If somebody steps on a toe or looks at the woman wrong, it's a problem. Now we have all these issues. For them, they don't see those possibilities because that's not the consequence for them in society. So you invite us in, become a part of your group and your community, but then you take off.
Right.
You are included in that privilege
anymore. Right.
Exactly. We still have to fend for our lives, and everything is the stakes are much bigger for us. So that he managed to really put that conversation in there in some very interesting ways. Some of them, again, low hanging. Mary going out there to talk to them, it's an obvious kind of approach. But it set up some other interesting kind of dynamics. The way they played on her having lost her mother, but also that hint of, you're not even accepted in there. But also she's not accepted by, she wouldn't be if they found out that she was, in fact, at the time a mulatto, now biracial.
And I think that's the thing. It's like there's like little pieces where it's like a nuance that I was like, oh, dope. And then I was just like, oh, here you go, low hanging fruit. And it's like, this is, damn it. Like, here's all the things you could have done. You obviously went for the obvious one as opposed to maybe something that was more layered. Josh, you were saying?
I was gonna say probably the one thing that jumped out for me that was a minus against the movie was the introduction of the native vampire hunters who basically just came and went, and that was it, and they just were gone, and that they weren't seen or heard from again. I mean, to use them as a device to sort of allude to the fact that A, there's more than one, B, that there are people out there hunting them, and then C, that these are the people that are hunting them, to have that not paid off later on down the line, just, why have him then? Because he could have just knocked on the door, pulled up, and then, you could have just completely hacked them out of the movie, and it wouldn't have made any sort of difference to the narrative whatsoever. But I think
hacking Remick off, you would have had the same thing. I said if you cut Remick out of the movie, you might have had the same thing. But I was joking.
To your point, though. But I think, and it could have been just one extra scene of them coming up on the juke joint in the morning or later on down the line, at some point, saying, hey, we're vampire hunters and we were hunting vampires and we tracked them here. And then you could do with that whatever you want, whatever you will. Now there's allyship between, natives and African Americans, or, they pulled up too late, or, any number of things, any number of ways that you could have sort of tied that particular dangling plot point off. But
and the Wumi Musaka character was already into the occult with her root work and things like that. So there was a path, you're right, to where they could have potentially, because she obviously knew us about some of the supernatural world.
Yeah, and less occult and more African spirituality from what I saw. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. No, I didn't say cult. I said that she was into the mysticism aspect of that part of the culture. And so
I see what you're saying.
It would have made sense if she's creating roots and things like that she might sell some herbs and things like some protection things or
to
whatever.
Them. Right.
To them.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing where it's just like, you're right. Like one of D's comments earlier when he was watching it was like, it felt a little long. And I was like, I kind of agree with that, because there was a lot of these pieces in there that didn't have a payoff later on. So like, you're right. If you cut out all of the indigenous scenes, just that whole part, and just have Remick running up, you already just saved yourself another 4 or 5 minutes right there. And so
stop
2.5. but there was moments like that where like but then on the flip side, there are good moments where like they were driving in the car with all of them, with Del Rolando, and you have Sammy in there, and all of them through the cotton fields, and then they pass up the workers that were the prison workers, and then Del Rolando goes into that story. So like those moments, I'm like, yes, these
He
are the
also
most
tells them to
chew it
hold
up.
hands as they sing, which I thought was good because it evokes the ritual aspect of it. In that
Yes.
it's not enough to just sing; you have to connect with each other physically.
Mm.
Because that is a part of the power that it offers up. So he was greatly used for that. Even his comment about, before we start doing all the dig at Christianity, and that's what probably made that line alone is what made Christians mad. Is that when he said, "Before this was what we brought here: the music, the dance, and the ritual, as the magic that exists behind it, and that heritage before they forced that Christian stuff on us." And I guarantee you that's what's got, besides the themes and all the other stuff, that's what's got Christians up in the heat. And if you think about it, at the beginning, Sammy he comes into the church, they're singing, they're praising, but what happens? There is not the same embracing or accepting of him for who he is as you see in the juke joint. So there is a juxtapositioning there that Coogler is trying to draw into, because one is institutional and it has a very strict dogmatic way of looking at things, and the other one that is labeled sinning is a little bit more
Communal.
indicative of the polytheism of the Black community, and not the monolithic aspect. You had Smoke and Stack, they're gangsters, but they go in there and they not treated like they're animals or they're outcasts. But we didn't see them in the church, and when they were outside of that area, they weren't welcome. But all the other characters we encounter that were outside of the church were welcome in that juke joint. And I think that is saying a lot about those two dynamics,
Including the fact that this boy came to the church with 3 gashes on his face, clothes in tatters, and no one had questions.
Ding
but
ding
not only
ding.
that, they immediately judge him and tell him, "Oh, are you ready to give?" So all of that stuff you deserve. We don't want to know how you got it. We just know that it came from evil. So are you ready to now let go of who you were to embrace, Christianity? And we don't see him let go of the guitar.
Yeah.
But there's an interesting conversation. Now, again, the way that plays out is a little bit too on the nose for me, especially the whole comment about if you go dance with the devil, he might follow you home. And some of the maxims in there was just like, all right, man.
I felt like I was talking to my old grandfather when I heard that.
Those are common aphorisms. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Those are common aphorisms, but they're so common that when they're placed in the story like that and in that way, it still feels corny, at least for me.
Yeah,
It may not feel corny for others, but it did for me.
It's like a wink and a nudge when they say it. Cam, you were saying?
Yeah. I mean, it ends up landing on the nose because, well, yeah, look at what happened. But in for that time period and for common parlance, that is almost the birthplace of aphorisms like that. That time period. So to me, it didn't. It made sense. Granted, I will grant that it was. I agree. It was a little bit of low hanging fruit, but not so much so that it was terrible.
No, I didn't say that. I just said that it was what it was. It was
it was a wink and a nod. I think that's the thing, and it was one of those things where anytime that there was a saying that I was familiar with, it was a wink and a nod. That every time they said it didn't feel like a natural thing. Cam, you were saying earlier.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, so I was gonna say that scene with Delroy Lindo is cut. I would be interested to hear and see the full scene, and I think potentially if we see that scene or revisited the scene and they re-edit, in my opinion, if they were to edit that montage of music and keep it to the contemporary period of their time, I think it works because Delroy Lindo was like there was a lot of meat on the bone that was cut on the was put on the floor, cut on the floor that didn't make that film, and it was a much larger monologue, and there was a lot of moments that was a moment there, and I feel like by doing that, I think we missed something because he had a couple lines in there that stood out, and I was like, oh, okay. So I would be curious if there's a director's cut where that whole complete scene is there, and we see that. Maybe I look at different parts of the movie a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Potentially.
And I agree with that too, because I think like watching some of the post interviews and stuff, they were talking about the scene we're talking about is when they're all in the car, they're passing by the cotton fields, and they basically took that scene for a while, and they got to improv some of the stuff and have those conversations. But I think that's a good thing where I think like if we had that scene about the music, it probably would have made the scene pay off a little bit better for me personally. And I think that's what, or even picking that monologue and putting it over that scene to help that aspect of it. I think the other aspects of it, I actually like the casting. I think shout out to Omar Miller, San Jose State alum. Mm-hmm. That's the homies. But I like the casting that they did because one, everyone kind of fit in terms of, I didn't think it was anything overacting or underacting or anything like that. I think that the one thing though is the world building was good to a point, but then the supernatural world building felt super flat and almost like cheesy. So I was into it for the first 2/3 of the film. I was like, oh, this is super interesting. Smoke and Snack obviously had a name here. Their father was this. They ran away because of that. Now they're back and okay, they did some shady shit, robbed from the Italians and the Irish. So there's a lot of the world building of what was going on at that time period. But then once it got into the supernatural, it just felt almost hollow and flat because there was no payoff from earlier on. I didn't get to hear a lot about why the herbs that she was mixing were so important and how it kept him safe and those types of things. Talking about the indigenous earlier, you're 100% correct. If we would have saw one of them leaving her spot while there, that would make that connection of if they're fighting monsters, she knows how to fight monsters and make these things. There's that connection. So it just felt like once we got into the supernatural part, which is the last third of the film, it was almost like a smashed together. Someone basically was like, yeah, this is From Dusk Till Dawn meets Django Unchained with blues music. And I was all laughing because I'm like, I think that's a little unfair, but I can see where you're going because it feels like two separate movies smashed together. I think it works a little bit better than From Dusk Till Dawn, but not as much.
That's a good comparison only because that film also does not feel like a horror or vampire or whatever film until the moment it becomes a vampire horror film. That's what I felt with this. I didn't think that the tissue connected it enough. You asked earlier about the vampire aspect. The vampires represent some aspect of an outsider coming in and basically feeding or drawing on whatever that the people that exist there. So any Dracula, for example, always is represented when he comes by plagues and storms and things like that. I think if he had given the vampire itself a little bit of history in the world building, it probably would have worked a lot better. One of the best vampire canons that a lot of people don't mention to me was Vampire in Brooklyn because of it posited vampires as a species and not as a Maximilian couldn't bite someone and turn them into a vampire. The only reason that was the case is because Angela Bassett character was a what do they call the hybrid vampire human/human. What is it? A Dampier? Yeah, she's a Dampier. So that's why that worked. Or my favorite, which shout out to Kevin Griveau with Underworld. in that it started off as a blood virus that turned one immortality, and then one son gets bit by a bat, the other one gets bit by a wolf, but because they're immortal, it, you know, shapeshifts them into these creatures. So this more specific, the more I think it works. But I'm not against having more unknown things in horror, because I think when you explain things too much, it loses the terror.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't what was going on here, because Remick never came off as frightening or as something that did not belong. And I think that is what you want. And think about Nosferatu. Nosferatu created dread in that his presence, that creature's presence in in the regular world, created a chasm, right? He doesn't belong in this world. He's an outsider. He's a creature that, he's an invasive virus in a sense, right?
Can I add something to that? Didn't mean to cut you off, but when you said when you get around vampires, there's a sense of dread. So here's the thing: in familiar vampire works, when you get around a vampire, there is a sense of dread. There's a sense of terror. The sense of terror with Remick is he's white. That's the fear. So for me, that's how I'm looking at it. He's a white dude, and when he came up to the door, and it was like, "Nah, you white. We not letting you in." Like,
that's a good point.
Yeah,
very good point.
So
the problem is execution.
It wasn't executed right.
It comes down to execution. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. His whiteness is the thing that is driving the dread, but it wasn't. It could have been shown in a way that actually induced dread. And
yeah,
fear.
And
the reason
and I think that's
is because our two friends who don't like horror films were not jacked up by the horror in it. So that's how I knew it wasn't operating in that way.
And I think that's the thing where it's like, again, I don't like horror films. We talk about this all the time, but like that was my thing. It almost came across clumsy, and I actually agree with you. If it was a black antagonist, that actually would have been more interesting, because then you have two sides of the same coin, and it would be interesting to see that dynamic play out, right? What if the antagonist was a landowner that owned a plantation but kept or didn't do slaves, but he was the person that everybody was working for a quota, because they kept talking about that quota over time, right? You gotta get your quota onto your cotton, and so you can sell it, because everyone's sharecroppers. But what if the antagonist was the person that's actually the main head of the greedy capitalist platform, or whatever that was? Like, that could have been an interesting situation. And I think the sense of dread of him, we're more dreaded him being a white guy, less than he being a vampire. And it was kind of like, oh, you're white. Oh, now you're a vampire too. Ugh. It's like a second layer, but it wasn't like
know where that would lead, and how they can. You could have a night that's going well, and you invite these three jokers in there, and now all of a sudden everything is going off the chain.
Right, and that part was right. That part was right.
I felt like that was I don't want to say dread, but that was the danger that the initial danger that they represented.
Absolutely,
was being themselves, being white. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Here's the funny part: they bought the property from a white man, but wouldn't take his money when they wanted to, quote unquote, invite themselves in and support the juke joint under the guise of that. He bought it from a KKK member and was like, "We want to buy this juke joint."
Well, not for nothing. Who else you gonna buy it from back then?
I'm just saying though, why not take the money from the three white people that was outside?
Yeah, again,
letting them in, like they established that you let these folks in, unfamiliar folk who aren't down with anybody there, and you introduce some problems. Yeah, they could come in. Yeah, they could have a great time. Let them hit on somebody and that person reject them, or like he said, step on somebody's shoes or spill a drink on somebody. That, to me, that was clearly established. I didn't have a problem.
It was said in exposition. They never show that. And to your point about establishing it, they could have established that thematically earlier with a scene in which
it's the 30s. How much do you need them to establish that for
okay, so here's three things that stuck out to me.
Hang on. I want to answer that, because it's a part of the story that you're telling. So as a part of the story that you're telling, you assume that it's the 30s because it's Mississippi, that everybody understands that there's racism going on, and yet we see a aspect that is not common for that space, which is Asian individuals speaking full-blown Southern dialect. So maybe there's something else happening at play.
All right,
I'm
that's
saying
fair.
you establish it just by using a sort of a metaphor, kind of, not necessarily have to do a whole lot. That's what I was trying to get to. It was
No.
going a
That's
long way to get to.
If you have people who aren't Black in the community that are accepted, you need to establish the danger from the same element, even though you wouldn't establish it from Asian people, but white people come along, obviously, at some point, that represents a potential issue. You got to, yes, sir, you got to not look them in the eye. You can't talk there with them.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
And they actually
visually.
They established the part about the Asian couple and how that mix worked, right? They had each one had a store, and how this, like, you saw that, okay, you are part of the community already. It's not anything weird or anything like that, and so it made sense for them to be at this space because they're already part of the community. They provide provisions and those types of aspects of it. These foreign white people are the foreign white people that we know if we let them up into this joint, one bad thing happens, it's a wrap. And so I think those little nuances are good as well. I think that, again, going back to the length of it, it was like so many things that they, like you said, if it doesn't really help push the story along, we don't really need it. And I think there's a lot of scenes like that in it that kind of bog it down a bit, where it's like there's parts of it that I wanted to hear more of Miles sing, because I thought Miles was dope. I like Delroy Lindo more because he every time he was on screen, he helped push the story along, but he also gave context and layers to the world that was around, right? He's like, I can't play for you guys. I got my place over here that I play every week. I've been playing there for every 10 years and I always get my money. I don't know you guys. And I like that just showed more layers of the world that they are inhabiting. And I think that was one of the things that
unspoken thing too, that all those juke joints were going, because he's saying, will yours be around? And the sort of unspoken thing is that they go up and then they go up and smoke because the Klan and everybody burned down. Yeah,
he was right about that. So here's some things that stuck out to me. I don't remember if the town they were in when they went to go visit the grocery store, is that a all Black town? Can anybody?
Yeah, it was established as it. It was like a Black town that had Chinese owners that the groceries, and like it's just the town that everyone
think this is one of those towns that was similar to Black Wall Street, because despite what people think, there were multiple places like that around the country where there was prosperous
commerce and trade and everything.
Like this is
I was gonna say
places. Yes,
I was gonna say, you shoot two Black men in town and no white people show up to arrest you, there's a problem. So that's why I had to establish, is this all Black town? Second of all, there historically, when you had an Asian shop owner, they were in the between. So if it catered to a white and Black audience, they would have two stores. They would have one for just white people and one for Black people. So that's another why I asked, were there any white people living in this community? But it was only one store. But she did walk across the street to another store when the daughter went to her mom. So I was trying to figure out, that was a little confusing to me.
Yeah, it showed that there was two stores, and like it looked like it was a mixed kind of a thing. So everybody was mingling and stuff.
This is just historical things that I'm trying to put together. And so I was like, if white people did come into this town, they would probably shop at one store without Black folks being involved in there, and then the Black folks would have their side of the store. Yeah. The other thing too, and what's her character's name? Mary put two and two together by understanding how they got their money. I was surprised the mob didn't show up, but it was only in the course of one day. So when they
and then you got to think about it like this: they may not have said exactly where they were from down south, and so unless they start getting wind of two twins who just which again back then word could travel like that, two twins.
So I'm willing to suspend that belief because this all happened in one day.
I wouldn't say that the mob, but that's an interesting thing, because with that backstory, you would maybe think that there is a connection that would have been a narrative connection to the vampire, them stealing the robbing and then open the juke joint. So that goes to Cam's earlier point where you have all these things that really do work, but they're so disparate from one another that they don't mesh as well as they could have in the story and making the story work.
Exactly. And I think that a lot of the there's so many good elements. Like I said, the world building, and we've talked about this before, like as a negative, is just like Cougar's 2/3 usually are super interesting and kind of brings you in, and then it falls apart in the third for whatever reason, right? Gumby action scenes or like improbable villains or whatever it is. And then it's just an interesting thing where it's like the 2/3 of the film, it was actually has an interesting thing. It got me in. I wanted to learn more about these characters, this world that's going on, who he robbed from, this and that. And then I think once that supernatural aspect kind of came in with less, it kind of came in, and I didn't even say it hit you in the mouth. It kind of just showed up, and you're just kind of like, I guess.
And to your point, to that point that you just made, I wanted to get you guys' take on A, the third act, and then B, the post-credit scene.
Which post-credit scene? Because there's two.
The one that matters. The one that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the easy way to do it.
Okay, so here's my little thing with this. I'm still pissed at the motivation for Grace's character to be like to let them in, because I'm like, what are you gonna do with all of them coming in? You're not gonna save your daughter. Was it me? Am I tripping that there are 5 crew?
Let me jump in real quick. If you establish that they have to be invited in under no circumstance, and you've already established that they're vampires, under no circumstances do you invite them in. Even on grief, you don't invite them. You're gonna get yourself and everybody else around you killed. So that to me was a little like, all right, come on.
And I would have even add the motivation if like they popped up with her daughter, and there's the motivation, right? Like, her dude is already turned, he's a vampire, and then she looks outside, and all of a sudden now they have their daughter again. Movie magic, she just appears out of nowhere because they're vampires, they can move fast, whatever. But at least that would give you the motivation of why would a mom that knows that her husband's already killed, and they know she has a daughter out there, you essentially now have your daughter has now no parents because you let them in, and everyone else is killed.
Here's another part. 2 more things. I don't know if I was tripping, but it seemed like 5 turned into 10 people in that barn when they all came in. I was like, hold on, man, they killing some extras. Like, I don't like it. Feel like it got deeper. Maybe I'm tripping. I'm gonna watch it again, but it seemed like it was more people in that barn than initially the magic of camera work. Then when Smoke frees Stack and lets him live, like, what was hold the vamp? Like, you turned into the vampire brother was like, I'm about to murder all y'all. Then all of a sudden he has a change of heart to hold his word not to kill Sammy. All of a sudden, like, what changed? Like, why would you hold that promise? You're a vampire. You don't owe him nothing. You didn't owe him anything before. If you felt my brotherly love, that should have happened a long time ago. You should have turned against Remick. But all of a sudden, your human brother gave you the emotional upper hand at the end of the story for you to hold this promise for this long. Like, I was like, all right.
And that's the part that was weird, because it was like they established that when you get bit as a vampire, your soul is switched with another monster or whatever, and that's why they're not your person. So like when Smoke lets Stack run, you're like, well, wait, that's not even Stack anymore. He wants to kill everyone. Why would you let it's the shell of your brother? And that's kind of the typical vampire trope, right? Like, oh, Cam bites me and now I become a vampire, but I'm not myself anymore. I'm still a vampire.
Yeah, you die. The traditional thing is you die, and in your body, a demon that sucks blood and lives in the night, enters your body and wears you. But that's not you. It's not the best one to do it was the Buffy Angel thing, where when Angel gets cursed, he's a vampire with a soul, so he actually has a conscience now. But when he loses that soul, nothing. He's basically 100,000 proof sociopath.
But also, and so that was the point that I was getting ready to make. Even if you lean on the more Diet Coke side of the lore, where you still retain your personhood, but you're just a bloodthirsty sociopath, or you just you can't help the thirst for whatever reason.
The Anne Rice
Yeah.
version.
Right. At the end of the day, that wins out. So all your choices are shaped around that. So, you end up, even if you're not a sociopath before you're bitten, by the time you become bitten, you have sociopathic tendencies because the thirst wins out.
Yeah, you're a predator. You're an apex predator. You have to feed. If you
Right.
do not feed, you die.
Right.
So here's one thing that I one part was an interesting choice, which wasn't a bad choice, but the other I was a little confused. Now, when they became vampires, it felt like from obviously previous vampire movies, when you become a vampire, you have this enhanced strength, speed, whatever. But Michael B. Jordan's character fought his brother kind of on equal footing a little bit, which was a little off to me. And then the second part was I thought was a good choice. When a vampire was injured by gun or maimed, they didn't heal. I thought that was cool, actually. Like when Cornbread got shot in the mouth, he didn't get up and heal. He was like disfigured and still wanted to bite you off. So I was like, oh, I thought that was actually cool because it kind of breaks the normal stereotypical vampires that they're invulnerable to bullets and or invulnerable to physical maiming and physical appearance. But his gunshot wound, his face was still hanging off. He was still a vampire. But
I wonder if that, because did he actually feed on anyone? Because I wonder.
Yeah, he did.
Only
the dude that was outside that was trying to get back in that they thought was a vampire.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And so he didn't still heal after that. So
Nah.
I mean, but there's still so much non-specific stuff about what these how the vampirism in this world really works. Because we can assume that Remick is a master vampire. He comes from a very old, ancient world that he says he does, and he's got gold, so he's clearly been the gold, not just gold, but gold doubloons, coinage that has been, so he clearly comes from a very old world. But again, I think I look at Dracula as the quintessential template, yes, of vampire stories. And to me, when you have this was a setup like the Nosferatu Dracula, where there's a world, a community, a group, a place where there are people, they're going about their lives, and then here comes this evil thing that enters their world like a parasite or again a virus, and begins to draw on them and slowly take literally each one of them for his evil Congress. But the best ones, if you're going to do an ancient vampire, is to not. I thought this was too ragamuffin. I get they were trying to do the whole, he's kind of a ruffian Irish type, but for me, it's either the vampire needs to be almost unseen and disgusting, or a little bit more cunning than what I saw with Remick. Remick kind of didn't stand out as. There are some vampires that make you afraid of them, despite the fact that they don't look very intimidating, but you're afraid based on what you've seen them do. And we don't see for a long time Remick actually feeding on anyone or actually attacking. We just see the after effect.
And I think that's the disservice, because it's like, again, if they would have chose a different monster that would have been in African like mysticism or folklore, I think then we'd be more forgiving for the types of things like this. But the moment that we knew that it was a vampire, then our expectations were already like, okay, I have an expectation of what a vampire is, and now I'm missing those elements, right? Like you said, usually when a vampire comes on screen, they're either charming, menacing, or like sociopathic, or like there's a certain level that you're automatically expecting. And when you saw him as a vampire, you're kind of like, all right, dude. And then when he started to turn other people, again, it almost felt like more zombies, less these are a bunch of my vampire types of situations. And, again,
I think it was, I think the charm was, well, hey, we're just traveling singers, just, traveling and singing. And we just like to come in and sing the blues with y'all. I think that was the attempt at charm. and the thing was
Yeah,
all for
you're
it.
right. It was. It was. It definitely. That was definitely it. It didn't
Yeah.
land, but that was it. That was
I
what
thought it
they tried to do.
I saw it for what it was. I thought
He
it
was trying
landed,
to be
and I think
charming,
and
but
again
I
trying
think
to charm Mary when she came out there to sort of get what their get a sense of what their deal was, and Remick handed her the gold doubloon. He was almost like there was a hypnotic element to what he was saying and doing, but he was trying to charm. That was two instances where he was trying to charm. I think for
Yeah,
me, I think
nah, the golden bloom was she came out. It's like y'all got money. He was like, oh yeah, I got gold. Here's my motivation to get in. I think, in my opinion, if they would have established how bad the Irish have it in society,
mm,
and then you have this Irish man pull up on you, you could relate to him more. But there was
Yeah,
no
or both.
connection with
I'm all saying.
this
right.
Irish
Yeah.
person.
That's fair. That's fair.
So he just came off as trying to be charming, but it wasn't charming enough because again, they don't trust white folks in this
There you
society,
go.
and
But
he white at the
that's
end of
my
the
point.
day.
That's my point. I think it didn't it landed, and it landed even for me even better than average, because usually the average person falls for the charms of said vampire, whereas these people were like, I don't trust this white man. You crazy. You're not coming in.
Yeah, but
No way.
that's still not the point I was trying to make. The point
Oh,
I was trying to make is that in its capacity of telling a story about a monster coming into a place where people, that monster is not frightening. That's all. That's my point.
oh no,
Yes,
I wasn't trying to take away from that.
yeah,
That's a fair assessment.
yeah. No, your point is fair too, because you're right. That makes it unique in that they are very guarded about these creatures. So, but that's why I wish they had made Remick a little more creative, because so now they, I can't get in that way. So now I'm gonna get in some other ways.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah, and
that's what I was trying to say, but I was struggling with trying to
yeah,
make that.
and I think that's the thing where it's like if it was a slick vampire, right? And then he had no accent, and then all of a sudden his accent comes out, his Irish accent comes out, and then there's another aspect of it, and he kind of did that a little bit. We're saying like I've been old for 1,000 years, our people weren't like blah blah. They did it for like 2 seconds, just again more exposition, more a lot of tell not show, and I think that to make the villain the menacing part, we're missing that menacing aspect of it. So it was more just like my friends have been turned into vampires, not like this is vampires. Like at first it was like, wait, this is vampires, and I did like the scene when they were all eating the garlic. And the Grace character was like, "What the fuck are we eating garlic for?" Like,
Yeah.
and they were like, "No, no, no, girl, you gonna eat this garlic?
You
We want to shoot you."
gonna eat this garlic, or we gonna end up putting a bullet in you.
What
And I think that
what I thought was that they were going to show it when they saw the sun going down and then the natives started to go away. I was like, oh man, they about to try to hurry up and get away, because he about to burst out that door
Mhm.
with wings and all, and take them out. I was like, that would have been the moment to really establish Remick, because he goes in and he's weak. And then
and then he
as
comes out
they see
strong.
the sun going down, they know what's about to pop off. And so
Yeah.
they immediately tuck tail and run, but they left real slow, almost like they wanted him to come out at that
Yeah.
point. But they're leaving, so they know they can't handle him. But it spoke a lot that and that's why I thought it was going to happen, because you got 7 of them, they all have, or 5 or 6, they all have weapons, and yet they're leaving because they know they're outmatched when the sun go down.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been great to have established him in that way, where he bursts through that door and he just takes most of them out.
Yeah, because then that would have set the tone for what the level he's at, right? Like we always like the villains that are well established. We're like right when they get into the scene, they're snapping somebody's neck, shooting somebody, or they're chopping someone's head off. Because then we know, oh, this person is not to be played with. And by not showing that, we just see him going in weak. Then the people leaving, and then we never hear from the indigenous again. And then all of a sudden he pops up later on singing, Irish tunes, trying to get into a juke joint, basically.
Yeah,
Now,
I think
go ahead,
I
Cam.
was gonna say the director left it up to the audience to kind of put two and two together. Like especially if you're kind of familiar with the trope of vampires and stuff, probably more powerful at night. Hence they bounce because I was like, what's the difference between him running in the dusk and him at night and finding him at night? So maybe being out in the sun exposes his weakness or whatnot because he seemed pretty damn invulnerable to us. And then the connection between Smoke's ex Annie, played by Wunmi Masaku, the connection of her mysticism and root and the indigenous. There was something that could have been connected there. I think the director is trying to just leave it up to us to just put two and two together, but it was kind of weird where she was like, "Oh, you notice?" like you just know about vampires and stuff. Like, all right, cool. And she knew what to call them. I'm like, all right, so I don't know. I think it was executed badly, but I'm trying to cop some bell to Kluger and say he was just trying to give us a reason or some type of connection there and just leave it up to the audience interpretation to like put two and two together, because I'm like, how the hell did she know about vampires and their existence?
I think the implication is because she knows about different types of mysticism, different types of spirituality. The connective tissue there is she also knows about, as much as she knows about the good, she also knows about
she knows about the supernatural. She is literally positioned as a woods witch.
Yeah, so I wouldn't that didn't throw me off.
But to Cam's point, as a writing aspect, that should have been
one line of dialogue.
It should not even a line of dialogue. Just establish that she has some kind of that she understands that knowledge. A book on the shelf. It's called mise en scene. Use the entire frame to tell the story. Again, use the elements of cinema to your advantage. Ryan Coogler is usually decent at it, but this is a situation where, if I'm talking about just the negative, just the one little small thing, is that I feel like he was doing a little bit more than he needed to do. But with that said, it was still a good movie. And
hold on, before you go any further, can you talk about the Southern accent and the aspect of Michael B. Jordan playing a twin in this movie, Professor?
Well, I won't say too much. I'll just say that the Southern accents weren't great. They were not great at all. Yeah. For a deep South
across the board,
and I get it. I mean,
it's fine.
Wunmi is British, so I always talk about how Americans can't do British accent. Well, she could not do a deep South accent.
Would you say the same about Delroy Lindo?
Delroy was better. Delroy was passable. Very passive.
Yeah, it also didn't seem like that was like he was a traveler person, right? He had been, he's older. So it seemed like he had been out of that area, but like, and same with like Michael B. Jordan as the twins, right? They didn't have to have a deep Southern accent because they had been in Chicago. They left for a certain amount of time, but everyone else that was there is kind of like, you forgive it for what it is, right? But at the same time, I think that's. Yeah, it works.
It didn't take me out. Like, I mean, we've seen poor accent, usage with Southern, Caribbean, whatever, where it's just so bad that you're just like, I'm not gonna finish watching this.
No, that wasn't what this was. No. And I think it's only more apparent to people who have spent a lot of time in the South or the Midwest or in those regions. That these are people who have not ever had that dialect in their lives. They've only seen it from afar or studied it.
Right. So the assumption is it shows up the one way, and anybody who speaks with any kind of twang, is passable as general Southern as opposed to specifically from Mississippi where they were.
Right, because that's one of those, because you got the Florida Panhandle that's different from the Georgian accent, which is also different from the Louisianan deep, which then now you're getting into a combination of three with the Creole and all of that stuff. So it's I get why it was kind of more like, okay, that's Mississippi we'll do the deepest generic Southern accent that we can.
Yeah,
Because it would be
that's not a huge minus.
Hey, my only gripe, it wasn't
reflective.
enough yes sirs and yes ma'ams in there.
Oh,
No,
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
no,
Very
it
true.
was not. You said it wasn't
100%.
enough.
Look,
Yep.
I'm speaking from personal experience. I live in California, been living on both coasts, but I have roots in the South. When I go back to the South, that yes ma'am and yes sir come
It's
out
important.
instantly.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Everywhere.
That's fair.
Yep.
That's very
Awesome.
fair.
And it's because it's
Awesome.
important in the Midwest too, but in the South, even it doesn't matter if you are 30, 38, 45 years old. If you're addressing someone that's older than you,
Elder, yeah.
you say
100%.
ma'am and
100%.
sir. It never has
100%.
never changed.
If there was, if I had one more nitpicky thing, I would say there wasn't enough dynamism in Michael B. Jordan's twin performance. It's not that it was bad. It just didn't seem like there was enough separation between the two, between Smoke and Stack, as far as like two
And
being
that's
two individuals.
And which
And
is
that's
the
the
whole
problem, like-
point in and of itself. So that's why I'm like, why even cast him as two people if he can't make the distinction?
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it wasn't egregious, but it was slightly noticeable.
And I would say for me, it's like one of the best one actor playing multiple roles and making it believable is Orphan Black, deep cut sci-fi show. But like Tatiana Maslany, I always mess her name up. She was She-Hulk, blah blah blah. But the thing about her is she's played a bunch of different clones. Each individual character is completely different. Mannerisms, dialects, movement, slouching, all that. And so you could see the difference of the peoples, so that it almost took you to a point where you forget that that person is playing two roles. Where this one, it's literally the same person with a slight edge. Oh, one's where, like, thank God it was at least red. Yeah, one has a grill. At least they did that. If they did that, if they didn't do that, it would have been even worse. But like, at least they put some visual signs. But from the other stuff, how they moved, how they slouched, how they that kind of stuff. Like, even and then they're from the same place, so they're going to talk the same. But like, they didn't give the physical presence of two separate people, because even the identical twins have that subtle things. But it was too visual. It was, like I said, when I say visual
enough.
Yeah, Stack's thing was I have a grill, and Smoke was I smoke, and I have a blue hat. So and it's like
I
it
will
was
say
in scenes where they were together, you know, one had his head up, one had his head down, one was leaned up, one was standing up straight. So
one wore blue, one wore red. That was my only distinction.
It could have been a little bit more obvious. Is what I get you guys saying.
Cam, you mentioned one of the characters who had
could have been a casting of another actor in general. That's what I'm saying.
Look, we all know who should have been his cousin.
Yes, you know. We already know. So, Cam, what were you saying?
I was gonna say, getting back to your point, I would say Tom Hardy when he played Reggie and Ron Cray is one of the better examples of one person playing.
That's not
brothers,
even a comparison.
But I'm just saying, like, that is the standard. Like, I didn't think they were the same person. Like, even though they look alike, but they were completely two different people, but very subtle.
Yeah. He poured a lot into being different people, for sure.
Yeah. What was that, James? Though
I was gonna say there's one other example, which is Fargo season 3 with Ewan McGregor. He plays the Stussy brothers, and he is it feels like two different people. Like, the only reason you know it's him is because if you know Ewan McGregor, and also because the name in the credits. But otherwise, those two and him, Tom Hardy, and the first one that you guys named, I can't remember.
Tatiana Maslany.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Those are the three best.
If I may offer a pivot, there is, you know where I'm going. There's a lot being made of discussions like this, frankly, where people are, you know, questioning the holding or rejecting of your or revocation of your black card if you didn't like the movie, which is just one of the most silly, pedestrian, pedantic, like, why that's even a topic. Like, if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. You don't like vampire movies. You don't like period pieces. You don't like Michael B. Jordan. You don't like Haley Steinfeld. You don't like Ryan Coogler. You don't like movies. Whatever it is, like, just, it's it's one of the most pedestrian, ridiculous, monolithic conversations that just, like, why?
Yeah,
Why
and
do
it's one of those things where it's like, and what's his name? He had the Black AF show on Netflix. Um, and I'm not the biggest fan. He did Blackish and a bunch of other stuff, but he had an episode where his character as a black
Kenya
writer,
Barris, right?
whatever,
Yeah,
Kenya Barris. There you go. Yeah, it's Kenya Barris. But in one of the episodes, he went to host a panel for a young black director. It was his new film. He goes with his wife and his daughter. They go and he watches it, and they get outside. In his mind, he's like, "Yeah, that shit was fucking whack." And they're like, "Oh my god, that was amazing." Da 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 da. And so he basically did this whole show about when you don't like what everyone else likes as in the black culture. And he was like, am I the asshole, or is it really just not good and everybody wants to celebrate a black director? And I think sometimes for black folks, we love to say that we're not a monolith, but then when something like this happens, it's all like, okay, guys, we're all going together and we're all gonna watch it. We're gonna watch it 5 times. Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like, again, it doesn't mean, like, going back to what Josh said, just because you don't like it, we all agree. Black Panther, that third act is fucking horrible. Like, I enjoyed it, but it's not a great film. But I can rewatch it, and I enjoyed the actual film and what it was about. But at the same time, it was so much of it's weird when we use like a vehicle of capitalism to like all join together. Now we're all one and we're all going to talk about this. And I'm like, yo, man, if you don't like it, it's not a big deal. But it's cool that a lot of other people liked it. It's also cool that there's going to be someone that watched it that's going to be a future director of photography or a future director that wants to tell stories because they watched it. That's dope. But I think like you can still say like, hey, like, say for instance, the scene, right? The scene where everyone's talking about, I thought that shit was whack. Cam thought it was whack, but Josh was like, yo, that shit was cool. I enjoyed it. People on the socials, they love it. They thought the scene was such a ancestral, blah, 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 and woo, and all this other shit. That's dope. I'm glad they got that out of it. But we can also make space for people that are just like, yeah, that was corny. I see what you guys are trying to do, but it didn't really come off. And I think there's this weird dynamic where folks want, when something like this comes out, they want everyone to be on the same page. And we're just like, yo, man, we can also say we enjoyed it, but then there's things that have quibbles with it. And like, that's part of the reason why we have a podcast to talk about amongst ourselves.
Let me add 2 things. So when you asked me about the positive, I said like white people like it. Whenever I saw a post with Tom Cruise and Kevin Bacon saying they love the movie, my spider sense was up. I was like, I don't know, bro. Like this just don't seems off, man. You got these 2 prominent actors coming out like, oh, we love this movie. It felt like I voted for Obama. I could have voted for Obama 3 times if I could. I was like, all right, let me watch this movie and see if this is what it's really cracked up to be. And I watched it and I was like, yeah, nah, this don't pass the smell test.
Hold on though. To be fair, I think all 4 of us have the ism where if everybody likes something and they like it a little bit too much, we almost automatically look at it with a jaundiced eye, with a certain amount of like, all right, man, we ain't gonna like jump into the group think here. Like, this better be what everybody says it is. Otherwise, like, like we're walking into it with a certain expectation of almost not where it's almost guaranteed that we won't like it as much as everybody else.
I mean, it's rare. Moonlight was one of those movies, and it was awesome.
For me, it's the opposite. I actually, if I hear that the majority hate something, I'm gonna look at it because I think that the majority probably can't even read well. So I'm gonna watch it and then form my own opinion. No, I'm joking, but a little bit. But for the most part, these things shouldn't be treated like we all need to agree or we all need. The 4 of us have all expressed different opinions about this film, and we can still agree, all of us, that it's a really good film and is worth watching. And we can all still celebrate Ryan Coogler and the success that he's had. And the things that we criticize in his film are not about him being a bad filmmaker or we wish he'd stop. certainly not putting him in the same voice, not even close, as our friend that we won't name on this podcast, who likes to do a lot of slow motion. He got certainly more talent than that dude. But you know, it's also not going to just be a blanket. At least for me, it's not going to be just a blanket. This is a black film, a black director, a black story, so it's good. No, that's not how I operate. You're going to get a more nuanced discussion from me.
And I think that bears emphasizing because we spent so much time, I don't want to say tearing it down because that's not what we did. But we like you said, we had a more nuanced take. Like, these are the things we liked, these are the things that worked, these are the things that we didn't like, these are the things that we didn't work, that didn't work. Cam mentioned things that took him completely out of it at times, and that's fine. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with a proper dissection. That's what we do with any other film. We are all Marvel nerds here, and we all have torn down our fair share of Marvel films and television shows. But I think it bears repeating. That's not to say that this was not a good film, because I think we spent so much time dissecting it that it can come off as though we didn't enjoy the film or there weren't things. And it's a very good film. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Are there things that could have been better that I would have done differently? Like I said, there's nothing that separates this movie from the dissection of a Marvel film or any other thing that we enjoyed or didn't enjoy or what have you, and dissected it and said, okay, while it was good, there are these things, that's a fair critique of any other film that we would make. So it's not to say, I think it bears repeating a fourth and fifth time. It's not to say that everybody here did not enjoy the film, that Ryan Coogler did not put together a very good film. It's, we just had some quibbles, and so we're quibbling.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think, like, I go back to what I said before, was just like, this is going to inspire some young black filmmaker to get into film, get into DP, into acting, whatever it's going to be, and I think that's dope. And I think, like, we can celebrate all of these wins at once. Like, it's doing pretty well in the box office. It's on track to be about Creed numbers, which is a good thing in terms of just, again, black director doing something that's original based off stuff, and being popular. And I think that's a good thing that we need in this space, right? We need these aspects of it. And I think the unfortunate part is when people want to ascribe all of our for the culture and freaking symbolism and all the other crap that just makes it like, hey man, he's an artist, he made a film, and like, what you take from it is what you take from it. And I'm glad people are out watching it and having those conversations.
I was just gonna say really quick, I think that this film will continue to be talked about. The good thing is that the nonsense that's being spoken about it will die out because of the attention span of most denizens of this earth. And so the conversation will change, and it will shift directly to just the content and the analysis of what the themes and the different historical context that is presented in the film. You can break down different parts of that film and do tons of contextual, historical, different kinds of analysis. And I don't think that was what Ryan Coogler intended when he made the film, but it's a happy byproduct of it because it makes the film as important academically as it does as a Hollywood film that was made to make money. People will continue to study this film. There will be students who will make entire PhDs based on research and different thoughts and theories about that film.
I agree. And I think that's and to again, to Coogler's point too, he kind of got that Nolan nod, right? Nolan was in the middle of his like 3 big budget franchise films, and like, yo, let me go over here and make my little dinky film called Inception. And they're like, whatever, we don't care about that shit. And that went gangbusters. I think this is kind of his level to be able to go do something on his own that's not tied to a big major franchise. And I'm glad that he got to do something that was something that was deeply personal to him. And I think a lot of those elements worked out. And I think like it was good to hear in a lot of the interviews later how the music plays into a lot of the things, how they approach the music, you know, and in those aspects of it too. So I think on all ends, again, it's like you can enjoy it, you can critique it, you can be your quibbles, you can not like it, and I think all those things are good. Now to wrap
I think we
everything
should
up.
also hit on the. I think we should, before we
Oh,
cut
go
out,
ahead.
we should also hit on the deal that Ryan Coogler made for this film in terms of the rights that he retains after 25 years. The contract that he had in general is kind of bananas.
Well, and even that one is like I was researching a little bit more, and was a lot of it was like you said, rights revert after 25 years, and I think it was one of those deals that was kind of like, okay, we believe in you, but we don't necessarily believe in the film so much. So yeah, sure, we'll give you your cuts because those deals have been made with other films before, but it hadn't been made with a black director before, and that's something that's
Right.
a big deal. And I think that's the part that's of note to know that because like these deals exist, but these things rarely ever happen for black directors and for black directors that have an intellectual property that's brand new, that's not in a part of a franchise or a legacy or anything like that. And I think that part is of note to know.
And that was the
Which
biggest
is a
thing.
positive.
It
There's-
wasn't
Yes.
part of a
It's
franchise.
definitely a positive, and I think it's also it's a subject of debate whether or not it was, you know, whether or not they believed in the project or whether or not film studios are doing that poorly that they're willing to dole out this kind of a deal. I personally think they realize that this dude is bankable. I think there's probably a little bit of leverage that he has because of the filmmaker he's become and because he's got $1 billion behind his back with a couple of films that he's made already, that I think they were like, you know what, here, just take it, it's fine, we'll you know, I don't want to kick it on some like George Lucas kind of status where they were like, you know, I think it was a combination of probably they didn't believe, but also he's probably going to net us a sizable amount of money, if not with this film in the future. Here's, you know, Hollywood don't just hand you stuff. So I don't think they just gave it to him because he's great, because he's a great guy. I think there's a certain level of, when looking at it from a business standpoint, the man's $1 billion bank at this point. You know what I mean? Like,
So this is the gift and the curse.
Say again?
Of that. This is the gift and curse of this.
Okay.
He's bankable, but he also is leaning on bankable actors, which is a problem for me. Because this
but
is
you
why
also can't say that he's bankable in that two of those big budget films that he made were a part of a
bigger
franchise, one that it doesn't matter whose name was attached to it. It would
people were going to come anyway,
millions and billions of dollars. That's why I think
and he did.
Yeah.
So, but
and
the
I
other
think
thing is,
he did it for another studio, and I think this is one of those things where it's like, let's be more favorable to you so that you could do this. You could do something similar to our studio, and that aspect. Go back to the money and the capitalism part of it. You know, always right. Go finish the scam.
But this is the problem though, when you have this quote unquote bankable asset, it's tying himself to other bankable assets that's not always good for the project. Like, I think he needs to find a different lead actor than Michael B. Jordan. Like, for
that's
certain
this
projects.
guy. I don't think he is.
I know, but I'm just that's cool if it's this guy, but this guy don't work in every project. Like, he's not that great of an actor. I don't know what you guys think of Michael B. Jordan, but I don't think he was the right person to be playing a twin or a lead in this.
I mean, think of it in these terms, right? You have your guy. Your guy is bankable. You and your guy make films, and every film that you made with your guy has made a ridiculous amount of money. It's helped you skyrocket to a skyrocket to success, and B has allowed you to realize your vision for a bunch of ideas that you had. You don't go with somebody.
I don't agree with it.
If it's me and the three of y'all, and the three of you are not great, you know, collaborators or whatever, for whatever reason, but I've made $1 billion with you guys and hundreds of millions of dollars outside of the $1 billion. Let's move aside the $1 billion maker, but I've pretty much ridden you guys to success. Pass or fail, you're my guys now. That's just
Yeah,
it.
I
fair, but
think
this,
that's a matter of sorry, Cam, go for it.
I was gonna say, cool. We made we made a billion. However, you have the capital to take a chance and take a risk and be an artist. Use somebody else. Find a better actor. You
Eh,
have that opportunity now. It's
They all
before
do
when
it too.
yeah,
Nolan
when
did the same thing. He
yeah.
didn't stick with. They all do it. They don't necessarily stick with the same person. Spike didn't stick with Sam Jackson or Denzel. He changed up over
hey,
years, even though those were his guys. So it just depends on how you want to do. As
Yeah, and
a,
I think it's more about, like I said, it depends on how. Like Judd Apatow sticks to all the same peoples. They all came up together and they all rock together. I think that's kind of dope. Whether the app level, I think to Cam's credit, I think Coogler can now get anyone he wants. I think at this level, but also back to sticking with your homies. You stick with your homies. So I
yeah,
think,
man.
like
Give
for
him a
I
me,
small
don't have
part
a problem.
then. That's cool. Stick
I
with
don't
it.
have
yeah,
a
Like you
but
don't have to
like
be the main character.
yeah, but for me, like Michael B. Jordan's, he didn't take me out of the film. Like I think it was fine. It wasn't great. It wasn't horrible. It was passable enough that it didn't take me out of the film.
But
One last thing on Sinners as a whole, and then you guys can take over. I
mm,
think Sinners to me would work better as a theater play, in my
I can
opinion.
see that.
I
Or a
agree
series.
because of
I
the
can see that.
musical and the dancing element, or a series so that you can flesh out some of those
Oh,
corners
Yeah.
of the world.
a Sinners Broadway is probably coming. You know that happens at some point.
Well, it'd be good.
Doing
I mean, I
everything
think
else.
it would work as a
This
stage.
will work as a theater play.
As a,
Definitely will work.
yeah, so if they do it, in fact, I would say that Ryan Coogler should look at seriously areas where he can expand this because there
There's
is
talk that he might.
if there's a good because if there's a supernatural world, there's a supernatural world. You got plenty of things you can explore, and the great thing about supernatural worlds is you don't have to the rules are what you make them. You can of course bring in mythologies from the real world and all that stuff, but that's why every vampire story is different, because when it comes to the supernatural, the gloves are off, and this
Yeah, I
makes
agree.
that possible for more stuff in the future. So you
And
know,
I agree with
Even
that. Like I think like if they could do because like yeah they are working, or they had a good conversation with the Bitterroot fellas and everyone else. Go find the graphic novel. It's spelled Bitter Root, Root, but it's
But how do
pronounced
we
Root.
pronounce it?
Bitter
Rhett,
Root. But if you go out and look for that graphic novel, you can find it on all the places. But it has basically it's a black a black family's fighting monsters in a period in the period piece. And it's really dope. It's really fun. There's a lot of good stuff. Another good book to look forward to around black vampires is Philadelphia. That one's a little bit more modern, but it ties a lot of stuff into the past. And it's a really good, solid vampire book. Again, I don't like horror stuff, but I read this and I thought this was really dope. And a lot of the elements they brought in, again, black black writer and creator. And it really just got to it just, again, brings black vampires in with a little bit of mysticism and other things that. So again, I think Sinners has a lot of space for them to play with, and this could be something that could have a lot of fun with on so many different mediums. And I really, really hope they take that chance to stage play, TV series, graphic novel, whatever you want. Go have
could
fun,
be,
enjoy.
could be.
This is something
And
that has the meat to do that.
and to the earlier point that I was making, Ryan Coogler's deal is kind of fat. And I mean, he's got he's got a clause where it grants him full ownership of the film after 25 years, along with creative control and final cut rights, and a portion of the film's box office earnings from first dollar from the start.
that's a big deal.
That's
That's a really
that's
big
something
deal.
everybody gets. That is
Yeah.
very unique.
Positives.
That to me just speaks to him as a businessman as
Right.
well as an artist, because that isn't a deal that they would have offered him. That was after negotiation.
That was
And
absolutely something that was negotiated.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that I
That's
look
not
at
a I
him
don't
and I'm
believe
like,
in this. That's not a I don't believe in this. Here, take what you want. That's a hey, if I give you if I put this out through your studio, these are the terms.
this is what I want in return. And I don't know what it could be, just his reputation and what he's done, or it could be something else that we don't know about. And I'm
Yeah.
saying it's in the most positive sense in terms of business, not
All
not-
positive.
yeah.
All positive. That's the
Considering how
positive.
young he is and the fact that he gets rights back after 25 years,
Yeah, it's a
that
big
is
deal.
enormous.
That he said, I think the best possible thing about it, which is he will continue to make money as a filmmaker, but with this deal, he set himself up to where he can retire when he wants to, and
Mhm.
especially after that 25-year period, because this movie is going to keep making money. It's going to go into streaming rights.
Yep.
I think it has potential to be a solid anthology series,
Yep.
like where you tell a different story every time.
Yeah. Have fun.
And
Yeah,
if he
have
does,
fun with it.
if he does decide to do that, the deal includes royalties, it includes licensing. Like he's chilling
And-
in a he's
He's a real smart businessman.
practically.
Real smart businessman.
And this is the other going back to the Cam said positives. Again, this goes back to positives as creatives. Just Black people listen and watch and pay attention, because the business part of being creative is just as important as being creative. And I think it needs to be said again, because just because you like creating shit, you still got to figure out how to live. You still got to make sure your fam good. You got to do all these things. And that part, like, I don't like doing business, I want to let someone else do it, nigga. Like, just learn it. Like, learn it.
George
Like,
Lucas
you
is
gotta
a
learn it.
billionaire for a reason, and that's because the original deal with Star Wars was
I'm just
similar
saying.
to what
I'm saying,
Ryan Coogler
like,
did.
100%.
and this is the
It's
and
a
this
good
and I go back
deal.
to this again, and the reason why I said this over and over again, because I'm like, dude, it's awesome that you like to create, but if you can't, if you know that you're in the realm of capitalism and how these things are going, it behooves you to understand where this goes. We're in 2025 now. There is no I got taken advantage of. There's no I didn't know, because all the information is out there. All the models are there. You can talk to elders. You can look it up online. You can ask freaking ChatGPT at this point. But as a creative, not understanding business and how to negotiate your own deals, that's almost the thing that you have to invest on yourself, because it's going to help yourself and things in perpetuity if you do it correctly. And I think that's, like, we're at a point now where there is no excuses. They're all out there for you, and usually for free. And it's more of a just put the sweat equity to learn it, or even ask for a mentor or something to that.
Cam, can I just go back real quick about when you commented on how much the cast was? It was a dope cast. I want to highlight in particular one particular actor, Olawunmi Musaku, and I've in recent light I've seen pictures of what she actually looks like, and I want to direct this message to Marvel, particularly. You guys will rot in hell. You guys will never see heaven, because how bad you done her dirty is Hunter B-15 and Loki. And this woman is beautiful. You will not see heaven. You will not see peace.
To be fair, I agree, but I did still think she was beautiful in those two movies. It's just, I mean,
But they did not do her justice.
no, I agree.
Because even
boy,
Sinners,
no, I agree.
she was looking like something nice. But at B-15, they gave her the box top, made her look like whatever, a CO, correction officer. And I'm like, yo.
Lovecraft Country was when I first saw how beautiful she is.
Yeah.
I'm just saying this to say in short,
Yep.
that is a beautiful person. In Marvel, you will never see peace for doing her dirty like that. Ever. You won't see heaven.
And on that's where we're gonna end it, because there's nothing else we can say after that. But once again, thanks everybody for listening and us ranting about this nerdy shit, and also like, subscribes, shares, follows, all the things. But we're on YouTube. Give us a little follow and whatnots and everything else. But once again, this is Blerdlines. We out. Peace.